Imagine being turned away like you're nobody, while carrying a secret that can change an entire life. Now imagine that nobody collapses at the exact moment the empire's owner shows up. He's the kind of man who doesn't waste time, doesn't lose money, and definitely doesn't lose control. But today, he's about to lose all three, and it's going to be unforgettable. The receptionist's perfectly manicured nail tapped against her desk as she glanced at the clock for the 100th time that afternoon. 5:30. Finally. She gathered her designer purse and stood, smoothing her pencil skirt with practiced precision. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sullivan Enterprises' lobby, she could still see that woman standing on the sidewalk across the street. Still there, like she'd been all day. Margaret Chen allowed herself a small, satisfied smirk. The girl was pretty. She'd give her that. Natural beauty. The kind that didn't need the 3 layers of foundation Margaret wore to achieve flawlessness. Glossy dark hair that caught the late afternoon sun, delicate features, and an almost ethereal quality that had sparked an ugly twist of envy in Margaret's chest the moment she'd laid eyes on her that morning. Which was exactly why Margaret had been so thoroughly, deliciously cruel. The memory still warmed her. The young woman had approached the reception desk at 8:45 sharp, her voice soft and trembling. "I need to speak with Mr. Sullivan, please. Carter Sullivan. It's urgent." Margaret had looked her up and down with deliberate slowness, taking in the simple cotton dress, the worn but clean sneakers, the complete absence of designer labels, not their usual clientele, not even close. "Mr. Sullivan doesn't see anyone without an appointment," Margaret had said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "and his schedule is booked solid for the next 6 months. Please, I just need 5 minutes. It's personal." "Personal?" Margaret's laugh had been sharp. "Mr. Sullivan doesn't do personal visits at the office, company policy, and you can't wait here. Security regulations." She'd practically herded the girl toward the door, watching with satisfaction as confusion and hurt flickered across that pretty face. The security guards had looked uncomfortable but hadn't intervened. Margaret Chen had worked at Sullivan Enterprises for 5 years. She knew the rules, or at least she knew how to bend them when it suited her purposes. Now, 10 hours later, the girl was still there. If this story is touching your heart, show your support. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Every action helps us keep bringing you new stories full of emotion. Margaret pushed through the revolving doors into the cooling evening air and paused, studying the figure across the street. The woman was swaying slightly, one hand pressed against the building's stone facade, as if needing support. She looked pale, exhausted. Good, Margaret thought viciously. Maybe she'll finally give up and leave Mr. Sullivan alone. She didn't know why she felt such fierce protectiveness over a man who barely noticed her existence. Carter Sullivan was so far above her pay grade, it was laughable. But she'd nurtured a careful fantasy over the years, one where he'd finally look up from his endless meetings and see her, really see her. This woman, with her simple clothes and desperate eyes, threatened that fantasy in ways Margaret couldn't quite articulate. "Pathetic," Margaret muttered, turning toward the parking garage. She didn't look back. Natalie Spencer's vision was starting to blur at the edges, a grey fog creeping into her peripheral vision like an unwelcome guest. She pressed her palm harder against the cool stone of the building behind her, willing her knees to lock, her legs to hold just a little longer. "Just until he comes out," she told herself. "Just until I can see his face." The baby, she couldn't call it anything else now, not after seeing those 2 pink lines, was barely the size of a lemon, but it felt like it was already taking everything from her. Her energy, her appetite, her ability to stand upright for more than a few hours without feeling like she might crumble. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. The thought of food made her stomach revolt, and the anxiety had been so overwhelming she'd barely managed to keep down water. But she'd known she had to do this. Had to tell him. Carter Sullivan. Even his name sent a complicated tangle of emotions through her chest. Desire, anger, hope, despair. The memory of his hands on her skin, the sound of his laugh against her ear, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only person in the universe. It all felt like a fever dream now. Something too perfect to be real. Maybe it hadn't been real. Maybe for him, it had just been another night with another woman. But the baby was real. The baby was very, very real. Natalie's hand drifted to her still flat stomach, a protective gesture she'd been making unconsciously for days. 2 months. It had been 2 months since that night. 2 months since the most incredible and terrifying experience of her 26 years on this planet. She'd been so stupid, so recklessly, beautifully stupid. Her best friend Charlotte had dragged her to that charity gala, insisting she needed to get out more and stop being a hermit. Natalie had protested. She didn't belong in that world of champagne towers and $1,000 dresses. She was a freelance translator who worked from her grandmother's tiny apartment, surviving on instant ramen and the occasional splurge at the Thai place down the street. But Charlotte came from money, real money, and she'd bought Natalie a dress, elegant, simple, borrowed, and refused to take no for an answer. "You're brilliant and gorgeous, and you spend too much time alone with French legal documents," Charlotte had said. "Live a little." So Natalie had lived, and look where it got her. The moment Carter Sullivan's eyes had met hers across that glittering ballroom, something had shifted in the air. He'd been surrounded by important-looking people, tall and commanding in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, but when he looked at her, everyone else had simply disappeared. He'd crossed the room like a man on a mission, and when he'd smiled, God, when he'd smiled, Natalie had forgotten how to breathe. They'd talked for hours, about everything and nothing. He'd made her laugh so hard she'd snorted champagne, which should have been mortifying, but instead had made him laugh even harder. The chemistry between them had been like a living thing, crackling and urgent and impossible to ignore. When he'd leaned down and whispered, "Come with me," she hadn't hesitated. The hotel room had been beautiful, expensive in a way that made her anxiety spike for approximately 10 seconds before his mouth had found hers and thinking became impossible. He'd been gentle and passionate and attentive in ways she hadn't known existed outside romance novels. He'd taken her virginity with such care, such reverence, that she'd actually cried afterward. Not from pain, but from the overwhelming intimacy of it all. They'd stayed awake until dawn, bodies tangled in silk sheets, sharing secrets and dreams and kisses that tasted like promises. And then, his phone had rung. She'd watched his face transform from soft and open to hard and terrified in the space of a heartbeat. His father was in the hospital, critical condition. He dressed in seconds, kissing her forehead, promising he'd be back, promising this wasn't over. But in his panic, he'd forgotten to leave his number, and she'd been too shocked, too overwhelmed to think to ask. When she'd woken up alone hours later, the sheets still smelling like him, she'd felt the first cold fingers of doubt curl around her heart. He was Carter Sullivan, billionaire entrepreneur, CEO of Sullivan Enterprises. She'd looked him up afterward, seen the articles, the photos with beautiful women at charity events and business galas. He lived in a world so far removed from hers, they might as well be different planets. Maybe he regretted it. Maybe it had been a moment of weakness, a night of slumming it with the regular people. Maybe he'd woken up relieved that she hadn't left her number, that he could forget the whole thing ever happened. Pride had kept her from seeking him out. Pride and fear and the bone-deep certainty that she couldn't survive being rejected by him, until the test had shown positive, until she'd realized she was carrying his child. That changed everything. He deserved to know. She'd spent weeks gathering courage, rehearsing what she'd say. She'd researched the address of Sullivan Enterprises headquarters, arrived early, her heart hammering against her ribs. And that receptionist, that cruel, beautiful woman, had looked at her like she was dirt on her shoe. Natalie had tried to explain, had tried to convey the urgency without revealing too much. But the woman's eyes had been ice, and before Natalie knew what was happening, she was being escorted out by security guards who wouldn't meet her eyes. So she'd waited. What else could she do? Carter had to leave eventually, had to see her eventually. She'd stand here all day if she had to. She just hadn't accounted for how weak she'd feel, how the summer sun would drain her like a vampire, how her vision would start to swim and her knees would start to buckle, and the doors of Sullivan Enterprises burst open, and suddenly he was there. Carter Sullivan in the flesh, more devastating than she remembered. Taller somehow, his shoulders broader, his presence more commanding. He was surrounded by people in expensive suits, talking rapid-fire about numbers and projections and quarterly reports. He looked nothing like the man who'd laughed at her terrible jokes and kissed her like she was oxygen, and he was drowning. Natalie tried to move forward, tried to call out his name, but her legs had other ideas. Her vision was going black, and the last thing she registered before the world tilted sideways was the sound of someone screaming, and then nothing. Carter Sullivan had been in the middle of explaining why the Henderson merger needed to close by Friday, when Marcus, his head of security, made a sound like he'd been punched in the gut. "Sir, someone just collapsed, right in front of the building." Carter's first instinct was to keep walking. He had 17 more items on today's agenda, a conference call with Tokyo in 20 minutes, and a headache that felt like someone was using his skull for percussion practice. But something in Marcus's voice, alarm, urgency, something else, made him stop. "Where?" "There, by the east entrance. A woman—" Carter didn't hear the rest. He was already running, his expensive Italian shoes slapping against the pavement, his entourage of executives scrambling to keep up. A small crowd had gathered, but they parted when they saw him coming, probably recognizing the 6'3" frame and the expression that made grown men wet themselves in board meetings. And then he saw her. The world stopped. Every sound faded to white noise. Every person disappeared. There was only her, crumpled on the concrete like a broken doll, dark hair spilling across the grey stone, face so pale it was almost translucent. No, 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 no. "Natalie," he breathed, and the name tore out of him like a prayer. He was on his knees beside her before he remembered how, gathering her into his arms with a tenderness that felt like muscle memory. Her head lolled against his shoulder, and Christ, she was so light, too light. When had she gotten so thin? "Sir, should we call an ambulance?" Marcus was hovering, radio already in hand. "No, my car. Now." Carter stood in one smooth motion, cradling her against his chest like she was made of spun glass. Her head tucked perfectly under his chin, and some broken part of him wanted to sob at how right she felt there. Clear a path. Move. People scattered. Good. He didn't have patience for obstacles right now. Not when she was unconscious in his arms, not when he could feel how rapidly her heart was racing against his chest like a frightened bird. The back of his Bentley was temperature-controlled luxury, but Carter barely noticed as he slid in with Natalie still pressed against him. He couldn't seem to let her go, couldn't seem to stop running his fingers through her hair, checking her pulse, touching her face like he needed to confirm she was real. "Drive," he barked at his driver. "My apartment, fast." "Hospital might be better. My apartment has my private physician on call 24/7. Move." The car surged forward. Carter cradled Natalie's face in his palm, thumbs brushing her two sharp cheekbones. She looked exhausted, devastated, like she'd been through hell and barely survived. "What happened to you?" he thought desperately. "Where have you been?" 2 months. It had been 2 months, 3 weeks and 4 days since he'd woken up in that hospital room after his father's death, and realized he didn't know how to find her, didn't know her last name, didn't know where she lived or worked, or even if the name she'd given him was real. Natalie, just Natalie. He'd spent thousands of dollars on private investigators with nothing but a first name and the location of a charity gala to work with. Every dead end had felt like another nail in his chest. And now here she was, unconscious in his arms, looking like she hadn't eaten or slept in weeks. Why was she here? How had she found him? His penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of Sullivan Tower, accessible only by private elevator. Carter swept through the doors and laid Natalie on his bed with excruciating care, arranging pillows beneath her head, smoothing the hair back from her face. "Dr. Reynolds is 5 minutes out," Marcus reported from the doorway. "What do you need? Water? Food? Something gentle. Broth, crackers, I don't know. And find out how long she was standing outside my building. I want security footage. I want to know when she arrived and why the hell nobody let her in." His voice had gone deadly quiet, which his employees knew was far more dangerous than yelling. Marcus paled. "Right away, sir." Carter sank into the chair beside the bed, unable to look away from her. God, she was beautiful. Even pale and exhausted, even with dark circles under her eyes that looked like bruises, she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. He'd thought about her every day. Every single day since she'd disappeared from his life like smoke. The way she'd laughed at his terrible jokes, The way she'd looked at him like he was more than just his bank account or his last name. The way she'd felt in his arms, soft and warm, and so perfectly right, it had terrified him. The night with her had been everything. He'd never felt anything like it. The connection had been instant and overwhelming, like coming home to a place he'd never been. He'd never been so present with another person, never felt so seen. And then his father had called, voice weak and fading, saying this was it, come now. And Carter had thrown on clothes with shaking hands and run. He'd meant to come back, had fully intended to return to that hotel room, to the woman who'd looked at him like he was a miracle, to figure out what the hell this thing between them was. But his father had died at 4:47 a.m., and in the chaos and grief that followed, planning a funeral, managing his father's estate, suddenly becoming responsible for 2 traumatized teenagers and a company worth billions, he'd gotten back to the hotel 3 days later, only to find she'd checked out. No forwarding address. No contact information. Nothing. The private investigators had hit wall after wall. The charity gala's guest list had been extensive. Natalie alone had yielded 17 possibilities, none of whom matched her description. The friend she'd mentioned, Charlotte something, had proven equally elusive. It was like she'd never existed at all. Carter had started to wonder if he'd imagined her. If grief and exhaustion had conjured up a perfect woman with kind eyes and a laugh that made his chest ache. Maybe she'd been too good to be true, but she was here now, real and solid, and in his bed. Why? Dr. Reynolds arrived with his usual efficiency, examining Natalie with practiced hands, while Carter hovered like an anxious ghost. Dehydration, the doctor announced. Exhaustion. When's the last time she ate? I don't know. She needs fluids, rest, and food, in that order. I'm setting up an IV. She should wake within the hour. He glanced at Carter. Any idea what caused this? No. Carter's jaw clenched. But I'm going to find out. True to prediction, Natalie's eyes fluttered open 47 minutes later. Carter was still in the chair beside the bed, unable to move, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. Her gaze found him immediately, and even confused and disoriented. The recognition in her eyes hit him like a punch to the solar plexus. She knew him. She'd come looking for him, specifically. Where? Her voice came out scratchy. My apartment. You collapsed. He wanted to touch her so badly his hands ached. What were you doing outside my building? She blinked, processing. And then something shifted in her expression. Fear, determination, resignation, all tangled together. She pushed herself up on shaky arms, and Carter immediately moved to help, adjusting pillows behind her. She looked at him for a long moment. Those eyes, God, those eyes that had haunted his dreams, were full of something he couldn't read. And then she said it. Just blurted it out like ripping off a bandage. I'm pregnant. It's yours. I spent all day waiting to tell you. The room tilted. Carter heard the words. Understood them individually. But together they formed a sentence his brain couldn't quite process. Pregnant. Yours. All day waiting. His mind spun through possibilities, through implications, through every emotion at once until it all blurred into white noise. Pregnant. She was pregnant. With his child. His immediate instinct was joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy that crashed through him like a wave. He was going to be a father. Natalie was here, carrying his baby, and everything in him wanted to pull her close and never let go. But then another feeling rose up, cold and familiar. One he'd tried to bury for 3 years but never quite managed to kill. Doubt. 3 years ago, a woman named Vanessa Hartley had shown up at his office with ultrasound photos and tears and a story about being pregnant with his child. He'd believed her, supported her, started planning a future, until the baby was lost at a convenient time, and it came out that there had never been a pregnancy at all. Just forged medical documents, and a woman who'd been paid by a rival company to destroy his reputation and distract him during a crucial merger. The scandal had been brutal. The betrayal had been worse. Carter looked at Natalie. Sweet, kind Natalie, who'd disappeared for 2 months without a trace, and hated himself for what he was thinking. But he'd been fooled before, been lied to before, And he had 2 siblings depending on him now, a company to protect, a legacy to preserve. "Why didn't you contact me before?" The words came out harder than he intended. Something flickered in her eyes. Hurt. "I tried. Today. Your receptionist wouldn't let me in. Said you don't see anyone without appointments. So you waited outside, all day, without food or water." The anger in his voice surprised him. At her, at the situation, at himself. He wasn't sure. "I didn't know how else to reach you." Her chin lifted, and there was dignity there despite everything. "You didn't leave a number when you ran out that night." The accusation stung because it was fair. "My father was dying. I know that now. I didn't know it then." Her hands were clasped in her lap, knuckles white. "I'm not here to blame you or ask for anything. You deserve to know, that's all." Carter stood, needing to move, needing to think. His mind was racing through logistics, possibilities, outcomes. How far along? 8 weeks. The timeline matched their night together. But timelines could be manipulated. He'd learned that the hard way. God, he hated himself. Hated the cold calculation creeping into his thoughts when all he wanted was to trust her, to believe her, to pull her into his arms and tell her everything would be okay. But people had tried to destroy him before, and they'd use any weapon, even a fake pregnancy. "I want a paternity test." The words dropped like stones. The silence that followed Carter's request stretched so long that Natalie wondered if she'd actually heard him correctly. Maybe her exhausted brain had scrambled the words. Maybe he'd said something else entirely. But no, the look on his face, cold, calculated, distant, told her she'd heard exactly right. "A paternity test," she repeated, her voice flat. "Yes." Something inside her cracked, not broke. Breaking would come later. This was just the first hairline fracture in what would eventually become a complete shattering. "Of course." She was proud of how steady her voice came out. "I expected that." It was a lie. She hadn't expected it at all. In her naive, foolish heart, she'd imagined, what? That he'd be happy? That he'd pull her close and kiss her and tell her everything would be okay? That the man who'd held her so tenderly, who'd whispered sweet things against her skin, who'd looked at her like she was precious, that man would believe her. Stupid, so incredibly stupid. "I'll arrange for the test tomorrow," Carter said. And was it her imagination, or did he sound relieved, like he'd been bracing for an argument? "Dr. Reynolds can handle it discreetly." "Fine." Natalie swung her legs over the side of the bed, ignoring how the room tilted slightly. The IV was still in her arm, but she didn't care. She needed to leave, needed to get out of this apartment that smelled like him, away from this man who was looking at her like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person. "I'll go now." "You're not going anywhere." Carter's hand shot out, catching her wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to stop her. "You collapsed. You're dehydrated." "You haven't eaten." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're pregnant and you spent all day in the sun without food or water." His jaw clenched. "That's not fine." "Why do you care?" The words burst out before she could stop them. "You don't even believe it's yours. You think I'm lying, so why does it matter?" Something flashed in his eyes, pain maybe, or guilt, but it was gone before she could be sure. "Because if you are pregnant, if that baby is mine, then you're both my responsibility. And I take care of what's mine." The possessiveness in his tone should have annoyed her, should have made her bristle and argue, but instead, it did something complicated to her chest, made her heart do a stupid little flip that she absolutely did not have time for. "I'm not yours," she said quietly. "The baby might be." "Might be." She laughed, and it sounded broken. "Right. Of course." Carter's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then looked back at her. "I need to make a call." "Stay here, eat something, there's food coming up." "I'm not hungry." "I don't care, you need to eat." He was already heading toward the door. "Don't leave this apartment, Natalie. I mean it." And then he was gone, leaving her alone in his massive bedroom with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and its enormous bed that probably cost more than her yearly rent. Natalie looked down at her hands. They were shaking. What had she expected? Really, truly. What had she expected when she'd decided to come here today? Carter Sullivan was a billionaire, a man who lived in a different stratosphere entirely. The fact that they'd shared one magical night didn't change the fundamental reality of their situations. He was powerful and wealthy, and surrounded by people who wanted things from him. Of course he'd be suspicious. Of course he'd want proof. But God, it hurt. It hurt so much more than she'd thought possible. A knock at the door made her jump. A man in a white chef's coat entered with a tray, soup, crackers, fruit, water. He set it on the nightstand with a kind smile. "Mr. Sullivan insisted you eat, miss. The soup is gentle on the stomach, and there's ginger tea for nausea." "Thank you," Natalie managed. When he left, she stared at the food. Her stomach growled despite itself. When was the last time she'd eaten? Yesterday morning. She couldn't remember. The anxiety about coming here had stolen her appetite completely. The soup was delicious, some kind of vegetable broth with soft noodles. She ate slowly, mechanically, and tried not to think about Carter's expression when she'd told him about the pregnancy. That flash of joy she'd seen before the shutters came down, she hadn't imagined that, had she? No. He'd been happy, for maybe 3 seconds, before the doubt crept in. What had happened to him to make him so mistrustful? In his study, Carter listened to Marcus's report with mounting fury that had nowhere to go but inward. "Security footage shows she arrived at 8:42 a.m., sir, approached the front desk at 8:45. Margaret Chen spoke with her for approximately 90 seconds before escorting her out. The subject then positioned herself across the street and remained there for the next 9 hours and 16 minutes. 9 hours. Carter's voice was deadly quiet. She stood outside my building for 9 hours, without food, without water, pregnant. It appears so, sir. And Margaret Chen turned her away. According to the footage, yes. Miss Chen appeared to be dismissive. Dismissive. That was one word for it. Carter replayed the footage on his laptop, watching Natalie approach the desk with her shoulders squared, despite obvious nervousness. Watching Margaret's face transform into something cold and cruel, watching Natalie's expression crumble, and then watching her stand outside his building, for hours, in the summer heat, swaying on her feet, pressing her hand against the wall for support, all because she wanted to tell him he was going to be a father. The guilt was a living thing, clawing at his insides. She'd been telling the truth about trying to reach him, about being turned away, about waiting all day. But that didn't mean she was telling the truth about everything else. God, he hated this, hated the suspicion that had become second nature, hated that he couldn't just trust her, believe her, take her at her word. Find out everything about Margaret Chen, he said, why she turned Natalie away. If there was any communication beforehand, anything suspicious. Already on it, sir. Marcus hesitated. And about Miss Spencer? What about her? The investigation you requested. The preliminary report should be ready by morning. Right. The investigation. Carter had sent Natalie's name to his private investigator the moment he'd recognized her unconscious on the sidewalk, before he'd even known about the pregnancy. Just a gut instinct to know everything about the woman who'd haunted him for 2 months. Now it felt dirty, invasive, like a betrayal, but necessary, the cold part of his brain insisted. You need to know who she really is. Send it when it's ready, he said, and hated himself a little more. When he returned to the bedroom, Natalie had finished eating. She was standing by the window, arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the city lights. She looked small, fragile, beautiful. Better? He asked. She didn't turn around. Thank you for the food. You should rest. The guest room is made up, or you can stay here. I'll take the couch. I should go home. Not tonight. Carter moved closer, unable to help himself. It's late, you're exhausted, please just stay one night. She finally turned to look at him, and the expression on her face gutted him. It wasn't anger, wasn't hurt. It was resignation, like she'd expected disappointment and he'd delivered exactly that. One night, she agreed quietly, but then I'm leaving. We'll talk about that tomorrow. There's nothing to talk about. You'll do your test. Get your results. And then, she shrugged. Then you'll either believe me or you won't. Natalie, I'm tired, Carter. Can you just show me where I'm sleeping? He wanted to argue. Wanted to explain about Vanessa, about the betrayal, about why he was this way. But the exhaustion in her eyes stopped him. This way, he said instead. The guest room was down the hall, spacious and elegant, with its own bathroom and a bed that looked like a cloud. Natalie walked in without a word, and Carter found himself hovering in the doorway like an idiot. "If you need anything, I'll be fine. There are clothes in the closet. My assistant keeps the guest room stocked." "Okay. And if you get hungry again, the kitchen—" "Carter." She finally looked at him, really looked at him. "I'm not going to rob you in the middle of the night. I'm not going to trash your apartment or steal your valuables or whatever you're worried about. I'm just going to sleep, that's all." The accusation stung because it was fair. "That's not what I'm worried about." "Then what are you worried about?" "You," he wanted to say. "I'm worried about you, about how pale you look, about how you stood outside my building for 9 hours because you had no other way to reach me, about how badly I want to believe you and how terrified I am to do it. But what came out was, just rest well." And then he closed the door before he could do something stupid like beg her to believe he wasn't the monster he was acting like. In the hallway, Carter leaned against the wall and tried to breathe. She was here. Natalie was here, under his roof, possibly carrying his child. After 2 months of searching, of wondering, of dreaming, she'd walked right up to his building and he'd had her turned away. His phone buzzed with an email, the preliminary report from his investigator. Carter stared at it for a long moment before opening it, and hated himself just a little bit more. Natalie woke at 3 a.m. with her stomach staging a full-scale rebellion. She barely made it to the bathroom before losing the meager dinner she'd managed to keep down. Morning sickness, she'd discovered, was a cruel misnomer. It struck whenever it damn well pleased, with a viciousness that left her weak and shaking. She was crouched on the cool marble floor, forehead pressed against her arm, when she heard the knock. "Natalie, are you okay?" Carter's voice. Of course, because apparently this nightmare wasn't humiliating enough. "I'm fine," she croaked. "Go away." The door opened anyway, because apparently "go away" translated to "please come watch me vomit" in billionaire. "I said I'm—" She looked up, intending to unleash every ounce of irritation, and stopped. Carter was standing in the doorway in nothing but pajama pants, hair disheveled, eyes worried. And he was holding— Was that ginger tea? "How did you know?" she asked weakly. "My sister went through this with—" He stopped abruptly. "Doesn't matter. Here." He set the tea on the counter and wetted a washcloth, kneeling beside her to press it against her forehead. The gesture was so gentle, so unexpected, that Natalie felt tears prick her eyes, which was ridiculous. She was not going to cry over a washcloth. "I'm gross," she muttered. "You're pregnant." He brushed hair back from her face with surprising tenderness. "There's a difference." Same result. Grossness. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Drink the tea, it helps." She sipped it carefully and the warmth spread through her chest. "You keep ginger tea on hand for your pregnant guests?" "I keep ginger tea on hand because I'm apparently a masochist who drinks it when I have a hangover." He sat back on his heels watching her. "But Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, not the devil receptionist, swears by it for morning sickness." "How would your housekeeper know about morning sickness?" "She's had 6 kids. The woman's a walking encyclopedia of pregnancy wisdom." He paused. "I called her at 2 a.m. asking for advice. She was thrilled. Thought I'd finally gotten a girlfriend." Natalie shouldn't have found that funny, shouldn't have laughed when she was sitting on a bathroom floor feeling like death. But the image of powerful, intimidating Carter Sullivan calling his housekeeper in the middle of the night for pregnancy tips was too absurd not to appreciate. "You called your housekeeper at 2 a.m. I heard you get up. Thought you might need—" He waved vaguely at the tea. That's unexpectedly thoughtful for someone who thinks I'm lying about the baby." The words hung in the air between them. Carter's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "I don't think you're lying. I need to be sure. There's a difference." "Is there?" She took another sip of tea, grateful for something to do with her hands. "Because from where I'm sitting, literally sitting on your bathroom floor, it feels pretty similar. 3 years ago, a woman named Vanessa Hartley told me she was pregnant." Carter's voice went flat, emotionless. "Showed me ultrasound photos. Cried in my office. I believed her, supported her, started planning a future with her and the baby." Natalie's stomach clenched, and this time it had nothing to do with morning sickness. "The pregnancy was fake," Carter continued. "The ultrasounds were stolen from someone else. She was being paid by a competitor to distract me during a crucial merger. When I found out, he stopped, jaw working. The damage was already done. My reputation took a hit. The merger fell through, and I looked like an idiot. Carter, so, yes, I need to be sure, because I have 2 siblings who depend on me, a company with 10,000 employees who depend on me, and I can't afford to be fooled again. He finally met her eyes. But that doesn't mean I think you're lying. It means I've been burned before and I'm cautious. The explanation should have made her feel better, should have made sense, and it did in a cold, logical way. But it didn't change the fact that he was comparing her to a woman who'd betrayed him, that he was investigating her, that he couldn't just trust her. I'm not her, Natalie said quietly. I know. Do you? Because it really doesn't feel like you do. Carter reached out like he might touch her face, then stopped himself. I'm trying. That's the best I can offer right now. It wasn't enough. But then again, nothing about this situation was what she'd hoped for. She'd come here expecting rejection, prepared for anger, steeled for disappointment. She hadn't expected this. The gentleness mixed with suspicion, the care mixed with doubt. It was somehow worse than outright hostility. I should go back to bed, she said, setting the empty teacup down. Can you stand? I'm not an invalid. But when she tried to get up, her legs were wobbly and her head spun. Carter caught her instantly, one arm around her waist, the other steadying her shoulder, and suddenly they were pressed together, her hands flat against his bare chest, his face inches from hers. Time stopped. She could feel his heartbeat under her palm, rapid, unsteady, could see the gold flecks in his green eyes, the tiny scar above his left eyebrow, could smell him, cedar and something else, something uniquely Carter that made her want to lean in and never move. His gaze dropped to her mouth, lingered there. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Natalie, he said, and his voice was rough in a way that had nothing to do with the early hour. She should pull away, should put distance between them, should not be noticing the way his muscles flexed under her hands, or the way his thumb was drawing unconscious circles on her waist. I should, she started. Stay, he finished. Just stay. For a second. So she did. They stood there in the bathroom doorway, neither moving, barely breathing. The moment stretched and twisted into something fragile and dangerous. And then Carter's phone buzzed from somewhere in his bedroom, loud and insistent, and completely destroying whatever spell they'd been under. They broke apart like they'd been electrocuted. Carter ran a hand through his hair, not meeting her eyes. Sorry, I need to... That might be Tokyo. It's fine. I'm fine. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the apartment's perfect temperature. Go. He hesitated at the door. If you need anything, I know where the ginger tea is. He almost smiled. Almost. And then he was gone, leaving her alone with the ghost of his touch still burning on her skin. At 7 a.m., Natalie emerged from the guest room, showered and dressed in her rumpled clothes from yesterday. She found Carter in the kitchen, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and arguing in rapid-fire Japanese on his phone. He gestured to the elaborate breakfast spread on the counter, fruit, pastries, eggs, bacon, and mouthed, "Eat," before turning back to his conversation. Natalie picked at a croissant and tried not to stare at him. How could someone look that put together at 7 a.m.? His hair was perfectly styled, his jaw freshly shaved, his tie knotted with mathematical precision. He looked like he'd never stood in a bathroom at 3 a.m. holding ginger tea and wearing nothing but pajama pants. Meanwhile, she looked like she'd been dragged through a hedge backward, multiple times, by angry hedges. Carter ended the call and immediately poured her orange juice. How's your stomach? Better. The tea helped. Thank you. Good. He hesitated, then, Dr. Reynolds will be here at 9 for the paternity test. It's just a blood draw. Simple. Right. Back to reality. Back to suspicion and doubt and cold, hard proof. Fine, she said flatly. Natalie. What? She set down the croissant, appetite gone. What do you want me to say? That I understand? That I'm fine with being investigated and doubted and treated like a potential con artist? Because I'm not fine with it, Carter. I'm really, really not fine. I know. But you're doing it anyway. Yes. No apology in his voice. Just statement of fact. Because I have to. She laughed bitterly. Now you know what's funny? That night, our night, I thought, God, I was so stupid. I thought it meant something, thought you felt what I felt. But it was just sex to you, wasn't it? It wasn't. The words came out fierce, almost angry. Don't you dare say it was just sex. That night was... He stopped, jaw clenched. It was everything. Then act like it. She was standing now, the words pouring out. Act like you remember that night. Act like you remember how you looked at me, how you touched me, how you whispered that you'd never felt anything like that before. Her voice broke. Because the man from that night would have believed me, would have trusted me, would have been naive, Carter interrupted, and his voice was cold again. Would have been an idiot, would have gotten his heart broken and his life destroyed. Again. The again hung in the air between them like a sword. Natalie picked up her small purse. I'm leaving. The test will happen when I'm ready. On my terms, not yours. She headed for the door. You have my information now, right, from your investigation? So you can contact me when you're ready to act like a human being instead of a paranoid robot. Natalie. She was already gone, the apartment door slamming behind her with satisfying finality. In the hallway, waiting for the elevator, she let herself shake. Let the tears come. Because that had been harder than she'd expected. Seeing him, being near him, remembering. The elevator arrived. She stepped in, and tried very hard not to think about the way he'd looked at her in the bathroom at 3 a.m., like she was something precious he was terrified to break. Carter stared at the closed elevator doors for a full minute before his brain caught up with reality. She'd left. Natalie had actually left, and he'd just let her go, like an idiot. He pulled out his phone, pulled up her number from the investigation report, and immediately felt like scum for having it. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. Damn it, he muttered, heading back into his apartment. The breakfast spread was still laid out, untouched except for the single croissant she'd picked at. The guest room still smelled faintly of her shampoo, something floral and sweet. Evidence of her presence was everywhere, and the emptiness in her absence hit him like a physical blow. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Sir, the full investigation report is ready. Sending it now. Fine. Carter pulled up his laptop, downloaded the file and started reading, and with every line felt like more of an ass. Natalie Marie Spencer, age 26, freelance translator specializing in French and Portuguese legal documents. Average annual income, $47,000. No criminal record, no history of litigation, no suspicious financial activity. Lives with maternal grandmother, Eleanor Spencer, age 78, in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn. Father unknown. Mother deceased. Overdose. Subject was 8 years old. Raised by grandmother. Subject maintains friendship with Charlotte Whitmore, daughter of tech magnate Robert Whitmore, since age 12. Relationship verified genuine through school records and social media history dating back over a decade. No history of romantic relationships beyond casual dating. No evidence of gold-digging behavior. Multiple character references describe subject as kind, honest, hard-working, and fiercely independent. Financial analysis shows no unexplained deposits, no luxury purchases, no debt beyond normal student loans. Paid off 2023. Apartment lease in good standing. Utilities paid on time. Grocery shopping at budget stores. Public transportation user. Subject's freelance work declined 47% in the past 3 weeks following negative press coverage. Multiple clients terminated contracts citing reputation concerns. The last line hit him like a punch. Her work had declined because of him, because his receptionist had turned her away, and she'd been photographed outside his building, and someone had leaked the story to gossip sites. He kept reading. Subject attended charity gala as guest of Charlotte Whitmore, verified through guest list, parking records and security footage. No prior connection to Carter Sullivan or Sullivan Enterprises, no evidence of premeditation or planning. Subject appeared uncomfortable in formal setting, stayed close to Whitmore for majority of evening, until encountering Sullivan at approximately 9:47 p.m. Conclusion: subject shows no indicators of deceptive intent. Financial situation suggests genuine need, not opportunism. Character references and behavioral history Support claim of honest disclosure rather than manipulative scheme. Carter closed the laptop and dropped his head into his hands. She was exactly who she said she was. A good person who'd gotten pregnant after a one-night stand with a billionaire and had the courage to tell him. That was it. No scheme, no con, no manipulation, just a terrified woman doing the right thing. And he'd treated her like a criminal. His phone rang. Dr. Reynolds. I take it the paternity test is postponed? The doctor's tone was carefully neutral. Indefinitely. Carter stood, pacing. And Reynolds? I need you to set up a full prenatal care package, top-tier everything. Send the information to Miss Spencer's address. Of course. And sir, for what it's worth, she looked genuinely unwell last night. I'd recommend regular checkups. I know. Carter rubbed his face. I know. After hanging up, he stared at his phone for a long moment before opening his messages. What could he possibly say? Sorry for doubting you. Sorry for investigating your entire life. Sorry for being exactly the kind of paranoid bastard you accused me of being. He started typing and deleting, until finally settling on, I read the report. You were right about everything, I'm sorry. The message showed as delivered, then read, but no response came. Natalie made it 3 blocks from Carter's building before the tears came in earnest. She ducked into a coffee shop, ordered tea she didn't want, and tried to pull herself together. Her phone buzzed. A text from Carter. She read it, felt something twist in her chest, and shoved the phone back in her purse without responding. What was she supposed to say? Thanks for confirming I'm not a lying con artist. Glad your investigation proved I'm just a broke translator with terrible luck. The humiliation burned. He'd investigated her, actually hired someone to dig through her life, her finances, her history. She understood why, intellectually she got it, but understanding didn't make it hurt less. Her phone buzzed again. Charlotte this time. Where are you? Are you okay? Your grandma called, worried. Right. She'd told Gran she was running errands and might be late. That was yesterday morning, before she'd spent 9 hours on a sidewalk and collapsed and woken up in a billionaire's guest room. I'm fine. Long story. Coming home soon. Charlotte responded immediately. I'm at your apartment, with bagels. You better get here soon or I'm eating yours. Despite everything, Natalie smiled. Charlotte had been her best friend since 7th grade, when Natalie had been the scholarship kid with the dead mom and the recovering addict grandmother, and Charlotte had been the rich girl who'd decided they were going to be friends and hadn't taken no for an answer. The friendship had survived everything, different schools, different tax brackets, Charlotte's parents' initial disapproval. Charlotte didn't care about money or status. She just cared about people, which made what Natalie had to tell her even harder. 40 minutes later, Natalie walked into the tiny Brooklyn apartment she shared with Gran to find Charlotte sprawled on the couch, indeed eating a bagel, while Gran puttered in the kitchen making tea. Finally, Charlotte jumped up. I've been waiting for... She stopped, taking in Natalie's appearance. Oh, honey, what happened? And that was all it took. Natalie dissolved into tears for the second time that day, which was really starting to become a pattern she didn't appreciate. Gran appeared with tissues. Charlotte wrapped her in a hug, and slowly, haltingly, Natalie told them everything. The gala, the night with Carter, the pregnancy, the attempt to tell him, the collapse, his suspicions, the investigation. He investigated you? Charlotte's voice went dangerously quiet. That absolute language? Gran warned, but her own expression was thunderous. No, it's fine. Natalie wiped her eyes. He had reasons. A woman faked a pregnancy with him 3 years ago, so I get why he's cautious. Cautious is one thing. Treating you like a criminal is another. Charlotte paced the small living room. I'm going to call him. You're going to do nothing, Natalie interrupted. This is my situation, my mess. I'll handle it. By yourself. I've handled worse by myself. The words came out more bitter than she intended. Gran and Charlotte exchanged looks, the kind of look that said they were remembering 8-year-old Natalie at her mother's funeral, teenage Natalie working 2 jobs to help with bills, adult Natalie building a freelance career from nothing. You don't have to do everything alone, Gran said softly, settling on the couch beside her. That's what family is for. And friends, Charlotte added. Annoying, persistent friends who won't leave you alone even when you push them away. Natalie managed a watery laugh. You're not annoying. Lies. I'm extremely annoying. It's my best quality. Charlotte sat on Natalie's other side. So, what's the plan? Are you going to let him do the paternity test? Eventually, when I'm ready, on my terms. Natalie touched her still flat stomach. But I'm keeping this baby either way, with or without him. Of course you are. You're going to be an amazing mother. Gran squeezed her hand. And this baby is lucky to have you. Even if its father thinks I'm a gold digger. He doesn't think that, Charlotte said firmly. If he thought that, he wouldn't have apologized, wouldn't have sent you that text. He's just scared and stupid. Men usually are. Hey, your father's a man, Gran protested. My father's the exception that proves the rule. Charlotte turned to Natalie. Look, I'm not defending him. What he did was wrong. But I've seen you two together. You haven't seen us together. It was one night. I saw the way he looked at you at the gala. Like you were the only person in the room. Like he'd been looking for you his whole life and finally found you. Charlotte's expression softened. That kind of connection doesn't just disappear. Connection doesn't matter if there's no trust. Then make him earn it back. Make him work for it. But don't shut the door completely. Charlotte pulled out her phone. And speaking of doors, I'm texting him your prenatal appointment schedule. He wants to be involved. He can start by showing up when it matters. Charlotte? Too late. Already sent. Charlotte grinned unrepentantly. You can thank me at the baby shower. Natalie wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle this alone. But the truth was, she was terrified. Terrified of being a single mother. Terrified of raising a child without support. Terrified of her baby growing up, wondering why their father didn't want them. Her phone buzzed. Carter again. I'll be at every appointment, every ultrasound, every checkup, if you'll let me. She stared at the message for a long time before responding. First appointment is next Wednesday, 2 p.m., Dr. Sarah Chen at Brooklyn Women's Health. Don't be late. His response was immediate. I'll be there. And despite everything, the hurt, the anger, the disappointment, Natalie felt the tiniest flicker of hope. Carter arrived at Brooklyn Women's Health at 1:47 p.m., 13 minutes early. He'd left a board meeting mid-presentation, much to his CFO's horror, and driven across town with Marcus at the wheel going slightly above the legal speed limit. Now he sat in his Bentley, staring at the unassuming medical building, and tried to remember how to breathe like a normal human being. He was going to see his baby. Maybe, probably. The ultrasound was at 10 weeks according to Charlotte's text, which meant there should be something visible, something real. If Natalie even let him in the room, he'd sent flowers. 6 arrangements over the past week, each one rejected and returned by a very apologetic delivery person who reported that the lady said absolutely not. He'd tried calling, voicemail, texting, one-word responses when she bothered to respond at all. Showing up at her apartment, Gran had answered the door, looked at him with the kind of disappointment that only grandmothers could weaponize and said, "She'll talk to you when she's ready." Not before. So he'd waited, done his work, attended his meetings, and thought about Natalie approximately every 30 seconds. The passenger door opened, making him jump. Natalie slid in, looking annoyed. "You're early," she said. "You're earlier. I've been here 13 minutes. I've been in the waiting room for 20. They stared at each other. Carter's brain helpfully short-circuited at the sight of her, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and a soft sweater that made her look impossibly young. Beautiful. Tired. "You look exhausted," he said, because apparently his mouth had disconnected from his brain's filter. Wow. Every woman's dream compliment. But there was the ghost of a smile on her lips. "You try growing a human while translating German contract law. You're still working? Bills don't pay themselves, and before you offer—" She held up a hand. "I don't want your money. I wasn't going to offer money. I was going to offer to reduce your workload. You shouldn't be stressed right now. I'm pregnant, not dying. Women work through pregnancies all the time. Not women who collapsed from exhaustion a week ago." Natalie's jaw set in that stubborn way he was beginning to recognize. "Are we going to fight in your car, or are we going to this appointment?" Appointment. Definitely appointment. Carter climbed out, rounding the car to open her door before she could do it herself. She rolled her eyes but accepted the gesture. The waiting room was cheerful. Soft colors, parenting magazines, a play area with toys for siblings. Carter felt massively out of place in his three-piece suit. Every other person there looked normal, comfortable, like they belonged. He sat in the chair next to Natalie, hyper-aware of the 3 inches of space between them. She was reading a magazine about nursery decorations with intense focus, like it contained the secrets of the universe. Natalie Spencer. A nurse appeared with a clipboard. They stood in unison. Carter followed Natalie down a hallway, into an exam room, and suddenly reality hit him with the force of a freight train. This was happening. This was real. There was going to be a baby. His baby. "First-time dad?" the nurse asked kindly, probably noticing his death grip on the chair. "That obvious? Honey, you look like you're about to pass out. It's adorable." She patted his shoulder. "Don't worry. The fainting is usually Mom's job." Natalie snorted from the exam table. "I already fainted once. I'm good." "That's the spirit." The nurse took Natalie's vitals, asked a series of questions that made Carter's ears burn. Apparently there were a lot of very specific questions about bodily functions involved in pregnancy, and then said, "Dr. Chen will be in shortly. Dad, there's water in the corner if you need it." When she left, silence descended. Carter sat. Natalie lay back on the table. They both stared at the ceiling. "I'm sorry," Carter said finally, "for everything. The investigation, the doubt, I know." Natalie's voice was soft. "I got your 17 apology texts, and the flowers, all 6 arrangements. You sent them back, because I was angry. Still am, a little." She turned her head to look at him. "But I understand why you did it. Doesn't mean I like it, but I understand. I should have trusted you." "Yes, you should have." No anger in her voice now, just honesty. "But you'd been burned, I get it. Trust isn't easy when someone's broken it that badly." Carter stood, moved to the exam table, close enough to touch but not touching. "That night, what I said about it being everything, I meant it. You weren't just some woman at a gala. You were everything." Natalie's eyes shimmered. "Then why couldn't you believe me?" "Because I'm an idiot with trust issues and a company to protect, and siblings who depend on me, and a pathological fear of being vulnerable." The words tumbled out. "Because that night scared me. What I felt for you scared me. And when you disappeared, you didn't disappear, your father died, that's different. But I didn't know that. I woke up and you were gone and I thought," she swallowed hard, "I thought it had just been sex for you, that I'd been stupid to think it meant anything." "It meant everything," Carter repeated fiercely. "It still does." Before Natalie could respond, Dr. Chen breezed in, a cheerful woman in her 50s with kind eyes and efficient movements. "Hello. You must be the happy parents." "I'm Dr. Chen. Let's see this baby, shall we?" She squeezed gel onto Natalie's stomach, still flat, but Carter could see the slight roundness now, and pressed the ultrasound wand against her skin. The screen flickered to life, showing abstract shapes that meant nothing to Carter. And then Dr. Chen adjusted the angle, and suddenly there it was. A tiny figure, impossibly small, with a head and body and little limbs that moved slightly as they watched. "There's your baby," Dr. Chen said warmly. "Measuring right on track for 10 weeks. And there's the heartbeat." A sound filled the room, rapid, rhythmic, beautiful, like galloping horses or ocean waves, or every song ever written condensed into one perfect beat. Carter couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only stare at that tiny flickering form on the screen and feel his entire world reorganize itself around this moment. "That's..." His voice broke. "That's our baby." "That's our baby," Natalie confirmed, and when he looked at her she was crying, smiling and crying at the same time. Without thinking, Carter grabbed her hand, squeezed it tight, and when she squeezed back, something in his chest that had been locked tight for years finally cracked open. "Everything looks healthy," Dr. Chen continued, taking measurements and explaining things Carter didn't fully process. "I'll print some pictures for you. Dad, you can let go of Mom's hand now if you want." "I really don't," Carter said honestly. Natalie laughed, a real laugh, bright and surprised. "Then don't." So he didn't. He held her hand through the rest of the exam, through Dr. Chen's instructions about prenatal vitamins and next appointments and warning signs. Held it while they walked back to the waiting room. only let go when Natalie needed to schedule her next visit. Outside, in the cooling afternoon air, they stood by his car in awkward silence. "So," Natalie said finally, "that was something. Something." Carter looked at the ultrasound photo in his hand, the grainy black and white image that somehow contained an entire future. "Can I take you to dinner? Just dinner. Nothing else. I promise." Natalie studied him for a long moment. "You promise? Scout's honor. Were you even a scout?" "No, but I promise anyway." She almost smiled. "One dinner. But I pick the place, and if you investigate the restaurant beforehand, I'm leaving. Deal." As they drove to the Thai place she directed him to, the kind with plastic chairs and fluorescent lighting that served the best pad Thai Carter had ever tasted, he realized something. He was falling for her. Again. Still. Always had been, probably, since that first moment at the gala when she'd looked at him like he was just a man, not a bank account or a last name. And this time, he wasn't going to let fear make him lose her. The Thai restaurant was packed, noisy, and about as far from the Michelin-starred establishments Carter usually frequented as geographically possible while remaining in the same city. He loved it. Or maybe he just loved watching Natalie demolish a plate of pad thai with the kind of enthusiasm that made him smile like an idiot. "What?" she asked, catching him staring. "Nothing. You're just really enjoying that. First meal all week that hasn't made me want to die." She twirled more noodles onto a fork. "Pregnancy cravings are weird. I wanted pickles and ice cream yesterday. Together. It was disgusting and amazing." Carter laughed. Actually laughed. Something he hadn't done much of lately. "Did you actually eat pickles with ice cream?" "Vanilla ice cream with dill pickle chips. Don't knock it until you've tried it." She pointed her fork at him. "Although watching your face right now suggests you're definitely knocking it." "I'm not knocking anything, I'm just processing." "Process faster. Your spring rolls are getting cold." He picked up a spring roll obediently, and they ate in comfortable silence for a moment. The restaurant buzzed around them, families laughing, couples talking, the sizzle of woks from the kitchen. It was so normal, so ordinary, and somehow that made it perfect. "Can I ask you something?" Natalie said suddenly. "Anything. Your siblings, you mentioned them before. How old are they?" Carter set down his chopsticks. "Benjamin's 19, sophomore at Columbia. Wants to be an architect, and Jasmine's 16, junior in high school, currently convinced she's going to be a marine biologist, despite being terrified of fish." Natalie smiled. "She's afraid of fish, but wants to study them. She watched a documentary about coral reefs and decided it was her calling. The fish thing is a work in progress." His expression softened. "They're good kids. Lost their mum when they were young, car accident. Dad raised them mostly alone until he died." Natalie's voice was gentle. "Yeah." Carter took a drink of water. "He had a heart attack. Sudden. We got to the hospital in time to say goodbye, but barely. And just like that, I went from CEO to guardian in the space of a night. That must have been terrifying. Still is most days. I have no idea what I'm doing. Ben's easy. Throw money at his tuition and make sure he doesn't party too much. Jasmine's harder. She's angry. Lost both parents before she could drive. Takes it out on me regularly." "She's lucky to have you." Carter snorted. "She doesn't think so. Called me an emotionally constipated control freak last week." "Was she wrong?" The question surprised a laugh out of him. "Absolutely not. She was completely right, which is why it stung." Natalie grinned. "I like her already. She'd probably like you too, once she got over being suspicious of any woman in my life." Carter paused. "They're very protective. After Vanessa, after the scandal, they've seen what people are willing to do for money, made them cynical. So they'll hate me." "No." Carter reached across the table, hesitated, then took her hand anyway. "They'll be cautious. But once they meet you, really meet you, they'll see what I see, which is someone genuine, kind, strong." He squeezed her hand. "Someone who spent an entire day waiting to tell me something I deserved to know, even though I'd given you every reason not to bother." Natalie looked down at their joined hands. "You really have to stop being charming. It's very inconvenient." "Inconvenient how?" "Because I'm supposed to be mad at you. And it's hard to stay mad when you say things like that." "Then stay a little bit mad. I deserve it." Carter ran his thumb across her knuckles. But maybe also give me a chance to prove I'm not completely terrible? One chance, Natalie warned. Mess it up and I'm done. One chance. I can work with that. They finished dinner, talking about everything and nothing, her work, his company, Gran's insistence on teaching the baby Portuguese even though it wasn't born yet, Charlotte's tendency to text in all caps when excited. Easy conversation, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Outside, Carter walked her to where Marcus waited with the car. The evening air was cool, and without thinking, he shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. I can't take your jacket. You'll be cold. I'll be fine. You're eating for two. He tugged the collar closed around her. Besides, it looks better on you. Natalie pulled the jacket tighter, and Carter noticed she breathed in slightly, catching his scent on the fabric. The realization did something complicated to his chest. Thank you for dinner, she said softly. Thank you for giving me a chance. They stood there, neither moving, caught in that strange space between wanting and waiting. Carter wanted to kiss her, wanted it with an intensity that surprised him. But it was too soon, too fragile. One wrong move and she'd bolt. So instead, he brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so gentle it made her breath catch. Can I see you again? Tomorrow? You're very persistent. Only when it matters. His hand lingered near her face. And Natalie, you matter. She looked up at him with those eyes that had haunted him for 2 months. Tomorrow, but I pick the activity. Deal. He watched her climb into a cab, refused to let her take the subway this late, and stood on the sidewalk until the taillights disappeared. When he finally got into his own car, Marcus was smirking. Not a word, Carter warned. Wouldn't dream of it, sir. Though I should mention Mrs. Sullivan called twice. She heard about the situation. Carter's good mood evaporated. How did she hear? I believe Miss Chen, the receptionist, mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to your mother. Of course, Margaret Chen, who was going to be looking for a new job very soon. What did my mother say? That she's flying in from the Hamptons tomorrow morning and expects you for brunch. Carter dropped his head back against the seat. Perfect. That's just perfect. Because nothing said rebuilding trust with the mother of your child, like introducing her to your judgmental, overprotective, emotionally unavailable mother who thought everyone was after the family money. This was going to be a disaster. Natalie made it home to find Gran and Charlotte waiting up, both looking far too interested in her evening. How was dinner? Gran asked innocently. Fine. Just fine? Charlotte bounced. That man looked at you like you were oxygen and he was drowning and you're going with fine. It was nice. We talked. He was good. Better than good. Natalie sank onto the couch, Carter's jacket still wrapped around her. But his mother's coming to town tomorrow. Oh, no. Charlotte's face fell. Victoria Sullivan. You know her. Everyone in our circles knows her. She's... Charlotte searched for diplomatic words. Protective of the Sullivan name. After the scandal with that Vanessa woman, she became even more suspicious of anyone who got close to Carter. Great. So she's going to hate me. She's going to test you, Gran corrected. There's a difference. If you're strong enough, smart enough, and care about her son enough, she'll respect that eventually. And if I'm not, then she'll make your life hell until you prove otherwise. Gran patted her hand. But my granddaughter doesn't back down from challenges. Never has. Natalie wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe she could face down a billionaire matriarch and come out unscathed. But the truth was, she was terrified. Carter's world was so different from hers. His mother, his siblings, his expectations. All of it felt impossibly distant from her rent-controlled Brooklyn apartment and freelance translator life. What if she wasn't enough? What if they looked at her and saw exactly what Margaret Chen had seen, someone who didn't belong? Her phone buzzed. Carter, tomorrow, 11 a.m. My place. I know it's sudden, but my mother wants to meet you. I understand if you need more time, but I'd like you there as backup if nothing else. She smiled despite her nerves. I'll be there. But you owe me. Name your price. I'll think of something. She fell asleep that night wrapped in his jacket, smelling cedar and promise, and tried not to think about how much she was already in over her head. Victoria Sullivan was exactly as intimidating as Natalie had imagined, which was to say, absolutely terrifying. She sat in Carter's living room like it was a throne room, perfectly coiffed silver hair, designer suit that probably cost more than Natalie's annual rent, and an expression that could freeze hell. Next to her, a young man with Carter's jaw and wary eyes lounged on the couch. Benjamin, Natalie guessed, and perched on the arm of a chair, radiating teenage hostility, was a girl with long dark hair and her arms crossed. Jasmine. The whole family. Perfect. Miss Spencer. Victoria's voice could cut glass. How kind of you to join us. Mrs. Sullivan. Natalie sat in the chair Carter had pulled out for her, grateful for his presence beside her, even as she felt the weight of 3 pairs of critical eyes. Thank you for inviting me. I didn't invite you. I demanded to meet you. There's a difference. Well, no point in pretending this would be pleasant. Mother, Carter warned. Don't mother me, Carter. A woman shows up claiming to be pregnant with your child, and I'm supposed to simply accept it, after what happened with Vanessa. This is nothing like Vanessa, Carter said firmly. Isn't it? Another woman, another pregnancy claim, another convenient appearance right when— I'm sitting right here, Natalie interrupted. So if you're going to insult me, at least have the courtesy to do it to my face, instead of talking around me like I'm furniture. Silence. Benjamin's eyebrows shot up. Jasmine's mouth quirked, almost a smile. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Approval? Anger? Impossible to tell. Well, Victoria said finally, at least you have a spine. That's something. Gran raised me to stand up for myself, even when it's uncomfortable. Your grandmother, the investigation mentioned her, Eleanor Spencer, raised you after your mother died of an overdose. The casual way Victoria mentioned her mother's death, like it was just another data point in a file, made Natalie's jaw clench. Yes, my mother struggled with addiction. Gran gave me a home and a chance at a better life. I'm not ashamed of where I come from. I didn't say you should be. Victoria sipped her tea. I'm simply establishing facts. You were raised in poverty, scholarships through school. Now you work as a freelance translator making less than $50,000 a year. And you expect us to believe you're not interested in my son's money? Mother, that's enough, Carter said, his voice dangerously quiet. It's fine. Natalie met Victoria's gaze steadily. You want to know if I'm after Carter's money? I'm not. I didn't know who he was when we met. Didn't know about Sullivan Enterprises or his net worth or any of it. I just knew he was kind and funny and made me feel seen. And when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't come looking for a check. I came to tell him he was going to be a father because he deserved to know. That's it. If you can't believe that, that's your problem, not mine. How convenient that you— Mom, seriously, stop. This came from Benjamin, surprising everyone. He sat forward, looking at Natalie with genuine curiosity rather than suspicion. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why didn't you contact Carter right away? When you found out? Honest question. Natalie appreciated that. Because I was scared. I'm a freelance translator who lives with my grandmother in a rent-controlled apartment. Carter's a billionaire CEO. I thought he'd think I was lying, or trying to trap him. And honestly, after how his receptionist treated me, I almost didn't come at all. Margaret Chen, Jasmine spoke up for the first time. She's the worst. Total mean girl energy. Jasmine, Victoria chided, but without much heat. What? It's true. She flirts with Carter constantly and treats everyone else like dirt. Jasmine looked at Natalie. Did she really not let you in the building? No. I asked to see Carter, and she told me he doesn't see anyone without appointments, and I couldn't wait inside, so I waited outside. For 9 hours. 9 hours. Benjamin looked at Carter. Dude, I didn't know, Carter said tightly. If I'd known. But you didn't ask, Natalie said softly. You just assumed I hadn't tried. The truth of it hung in the air. Carter's expression was pained, but he didn't argue. Couldn't argue. Victoria set down her teacup with deliberate precision. Let me be very clear, Miss Spencer. I lost my husband 3 months ago. My son became guardian to 2 teenagers while running a multi-billion-dollar company. We've been through scandal, betrayal, and grief. If you're here for money or attention or some scheme, I'm here because I'm pregnant with your grandchild, Natalie interrupted. That's it. That's the only reason, and honestly, if Carter wants a paternity test, I'll take one. If you want me to sign something saying I won't ask for money, I'll sign it. If you want me to disappear completely, I can do that too. But I'm not going to sit here and be accused of things I haven't done while you pretend your son is some innocent victim who couldn't possibly have gotten a woman pregnant. She has a point, Benjamin muttered. Benjamin, Victoria warned. What? She does. Carter's a grown man. Actions have consequences. If the baby's his, and I'm guessing it is based on how he's looking at her, then we deal with it. As a family. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who had a con artist fake a pregnancy to destroy your reputation. That wasn't Natalie, Jasmine said quietly. That was Vanessa. And taking it out on every woman Carter meets isn't fair. Victoria looked at her daughter in surprise. You're defending her? I'm defending logic. If she was a gold digger, wouldn't she have hired a lawyer, gone to the press, demanded money? Jasmine shrugged. Instead, she showed up, got turned away, waited all day, and collapsed. That's not a scheme. That's just sad. Hey, Natalie protested weakly. Sorry, but it's true. Jasmine actually smiled. You're either the worst gold digger in history, or you're telling the truth. I vote truth, Benjamin said. She called Mom out. Nobody does that except people who are genuinely pissed off. Victoria looked between her children, then at Carter, then finally at Natalie. I want a paternity test, as soon as it's safe to do so. Fine. And if the baby is Carter's, I expect you to sign a prenuptial agreement before any formal relationship begins. I'm not after a formal relationship, Natalie said. I'm after my child having a father who wants to be involved, that's all. Something in Victoria's expression shifted. Not softened. Victoria Sullivan didn't do soft, but reconsidered. You're either very honest or very clever. I haven't decided which yet. Take your time. I'll be here either way. Natalie stood. If that's all, I have work to do. It's Saturday, Victoria said. Deadlines don't care about weekends. Natalie looked at Carter. Thanks for the brunch invitation. This was delightful. Carter followed her to the door. I'm so sorry. She's protecting her family. I get it. Natalie touched his arm. But Carter, next time warn me before throwing me to the sharks. There won't be a next time, I promise. Good, because your family is exhausting. She softened. But your siblings are kind of great. They surprised me too. In the living room behind them, Natalie could hear Victoria's voice. Well, she's got spirit. I'll give her that. And Benjamin's response. Mom, admit it. You kind of liked her. Natalie didn't hear Victoria's answer, but she walked to the elevator with the strangest feeling that maybe, just maybe, she'd survived her first Sullivan family interrogation. 3 weeks later, Natalie woke up to 17 missed calls and a text from Charlotte that said simply, I'm so sorry. Her stomach dropped. That was never a good sign. She opened her news app and immediately wished she hadn't. Translator claims pregnancy with billionaire Carter Sullivan, screamed the headline, accompanied by a photo of her leaving Carter's building. Another headline, Gold digger or genuine? The woman who says she's carrying Sullivan's baby. And another, after Vanessa Hartley scandal, has Carter Sullivan been fooled again? The articles were brutal. They detailed her modest background, her mother's addiction, her financial situation. They compared her to Vanessa, implied she was after money, questioned the timing of her convenient pregnancy. One particularly vicious piece included quotes from anonymous sources about how she'd trapped Carter and was clearly calculating. Natalie's hands shook as she scrolled through article after article, each one worse than the last. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Unknown numbers, emails from clients cancelling contracts, social media notifications she was afraid to check. Gran, she called out, her voice cracking. Gran appeared in the doorway, took one look at Natalie's face, and immediately pulled her into a hug. What happened? Someone leaked it, everything. The pregnancy, Carter, all of it. Natalie's voice was muffled against Gran's shoulder. My career is over. And it was. By noon, she'd lost 4 clients. By evening, she'd lost 8 more. The translation community was small, and reputation was everything. No one wanted to work with someone embroiled in a billionaire pregnancy scandal, regardless of the truth. Her phone rang. Carter. Did you see? She asked without preamble. I saw. I'm so sorry. I have lawyers working on it right now. We'll find out who leaked. It doesn't matter who leaked it. The damage is done. Natalie paced her tiny bedroom. Carter, I've lost half my clients. People I've worked with for years just dropped me. Said they can't be associated with controversy. I'll fix this, I promise. How? You can't unring this bell. You can't make people unread those articles. She pressed her free hand against her forehead. God, what was I thinking? That I could just tell you about the baby and everything would be fine? That your world and mine could somehow coexist? Natalie, don't. I have to go. Someone's at the door. She hung up before he could respond, guilt immediately twisting her stomach. It wasn't his fault. But she needed to blame someone, and he was the easiest target. The someone at the door was Charlotte, who looked like she'd been crying. That should have been Natalie's first clue. I'm so sorry, Charlotte said again, pushing into the apartment. I never thought it would blow up like this. I thought... Wait, you thought what? Natalie's blood went cold. Charlotte, what did you do? Charlotte's face crumpled. I told someone. Just one person. I thought they'd keep it quiet, but they went to the press and... You leaked it? Natalie couldn't breathe. You leaked my pregnancy to the press? Not leaked. I just mentioned it to a friend, and they... Why? The word came out strangled. Why would you do that? Charlotte's expression shifted, guilt morphing into something harder, defensive. Because you don't belong with him, Nat. You know you don't. He's Carter Sullivan. He needs someone from his world. Someone who understands the pressure, the expectations, Someone like you, Natalie said slowly. Oh my God, you're in love with him. Don't make it sound dirty. I've known Carter since we were kids. We grew up in the same circles. His mother approves of me. We make sense. Charlotte's voice rose. And then you show up at one charity gala and suddenly he can't see anyone else. Do you know how that feels? To watch the man you've loved for years fall for someone who doesn't even belong in his world. So, you destroyed my reputation? Tanked my career? All because you're jealous? I'm not jealous. I'm being realistic. Charlotte's eyes blazed. You're a translator from Brooklyn who lives with your grandmother. He's a billionaire CEO. What kind of life do you think you'll have together? You'll always be the poor girl who got pregnant and trapped him. That baby will always be the mistake that forced his hand. Is that what you want for your child? Each word was a knife, precise and devastating, because part of Natalie, the terrified, insecure part, wondered if Charlotte was right. Get out, Natalie said, her voice eerily calm. Nat, I'm just trying to help. You're trying to help yourself. You betrayed me, destroyed my livelihood. And for what? Carter doesn't love you, Charlotte. He's never going to love you. And doing this, you've just guaranteed he never will. Charlotte's face went pale. You don't know that. I know that he's a good man who values loyalty, and you just proved you have none. Natalie opened the door. We're done. Don't call. Don't text. Don't come back. Natalie. I said get out. Charlotte left, and Natalie closed the door with shaking hands. Then she slid down to the floor and let herself fall apart. Thasi Saichinda Sababi Carter found out about Charlotte's involvement through his investigator's report at midnight. He immediately called Natalie, got voicemail, and made a decision that would have surprised his old self. He drove to Brooklyn in the middle of the night. Gran answered the door in a bathrobe, took one look at his face, and stepped aside. She's in her room. Go easy. She's had a rough day. Natalie was curled on her bed, laptop open, surrounded by tissues. She looked up when he entered, and the devastation in her eyes gutted him. Charlotte, he said simply. You know. I know. He sat on the edge of her bed. I'm so sorry. If I'd had any idea, it's not your fault. She's been in love with you for years, apparently. I just never saw it. Natalie laughed bitterly. Some best friend I am. You couldn't have known. Couldn't I? She was always a little possessive when we'd talk about relationships. I thought she was just being protective. Turns out she was being jealous. Natalie closed her laptop. Carter, I lost 12 clients today. 12. That's more than half my regular work. I don't know how I'm going to pay rent, let alone prepare for a baby. Let me help. No. Natalie, I said no. Her voice was firm. I won't be the woman who needs to be rescued, who takes money from the father of her baby because she can't support herself. That's exactly what everyone's saying I am, and I won't prove them right. Everyone thinks it, Carter. The articles, the comments, the messages I've been getting, they all say the same thing. That I'm a gold digger who got pregnant on purpose to trap you. And if I take your money now, I'm just confirming their worst assumptions. Carter wanted to argue, wanted to tell her that he'd take care of everything, that money didn't matter, that she should let him help. But he could see the stubborn set of her jaw, the fierce independence in her eyes that was one of the things he loved most about her. Loved. Yes, he loved her. Had probably loved her since that first night. And watching her world crumble because of him was killing him. Then let me fix the media, he said. I'll hold a press conference, set the record straight, explain that Charlotte leaked false information out of jealousy, and look like you're defending your baby mama? That'll go over well. I don't care how it looks. Well, I do. Natalie stood, pacing. I care that your mother already thinks I'm after your money, that your siblings are suspicious, that every single person in your world is waiting for me to mess up, to prove them right, to show that I'm exactly what they think I am. My siblings aren't suspicious anymore. Ben texts me constantly asking how you are. Jazz wants to know if the baby's a girl so she can teach her marine biology. That made Natalie pause. Really? Really? They like you. More than that, they respect you. You stood up to my mother, which approximately no one does. Carter moved closer. You think you don't belong in my world? You're wrong. You're the only person who's ever made sense in my world. Carter. His phone rang. Marcus. At midnight. That was never good. What? Sir, you need to see the news, now. Carter pulled up his phone, and his blood ran cold. Another headline. Victoria Sullivan offers translator $500,000 to disappear. Oh no, Natalie breathed, reading over his shoulder. The article detailed an alleged meeting where Victoria had offered Natalie money to leave and never contact Carter again. It quoted anonymous sources close to the family, describing how Natalie had virtuously refused the money. I never, Natalie started. I know. Carter was already texting his mother. She never offered you money, did she? No, she threatened me with a prenup, but that's different. His phone rang. Victoria. Mother, what? I never offered her money. Victoria's voice was sharp. Someone's spreading lies. First Charlotte leaks the pregnancy. Now someone's fabricating meetings that never happened. Carter, someone is trying to destroy all of us. The next morning, Victoria Sullivan showed up at Natalie's apartment. Without warning. Without Carter. Just Victoria, looking imperious and angry in designer clothes that cost more than Natalie's car. Gran let her in with a raised eyebrow, but didn't leave the room. Smart woman. Miss Spencer. Victoria's voice was ice. We need to talk. About the article that claims you offered me money. Natalie was too exhausted for pleasantries. I told the press you never said that. They published it anyway. I didn't come to discuss false articles. Victoria set her purse down with deliberate precision. I came to make an actual offer. Natalie's heart sank. Mrs. Sullivan, $500,000. Victoria pulled out an envelope. To leave, quietly. Give Carter space to focus on his family and business without this distraction. The word distraction hit like a slap. Natalie looked at the envelope, then at Victoria, then at Gran, who was standing in the kitchen doorway with crossed arms and a dangerous expression. No, Natalie said quietly. Be reasonable. That's more money than you'll make in 10 years doing translations. You could move anywhere, start fresh, raise your child comfortably. Without a father, Natalie interrupted. You want me to take money to keep your grandchild from knowing their father. Do you hear yourself? I want to protect my son from making a mistake that will haunt him for the rest of his life, Victoria said sharply. He's been through enough. His father dying, taking on guardianship of his siblings, the Vanessa scandal. He doesn't need this added complication. This complication is your grandchild. If it is his grandchild. Victoria's eyes narrowed. We don't have proof yet. Just your word. Then wait for the DNA test, but I'm not taking your money. Why not? Pride. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Pride doesn't feed babies, Miss Spencer. Pride doesn't pay rent. You've lost most of your clients. How exactly do you plan to support a child? The cruel accuracy of it made Natalie's eyes burn. I'll figure it out. Like I figured out everything else in my life. By working yourself to exhaustion? By struggling paycheck to paycheck? Victoria leaned forward. I'm offering you security, freedom, a chance to raise your child without the pressure of my family's expectations. What you're offering is abandonment. Natalie stood, done with this conversation. You want me to tell my child that their father didn't want them, that I took money to disappear? What kind of mother would that make me? A practical one? A coward? Natalie moved to the door. I grew up without parents. My mother died. My father was never in the picture. Do you know what that does to a kid? The constant wondering if you're worth loving. If there's something wrong with you that made them leave. Her voice cracked. I won't do that to my baby. Not for any amount of money. Victoria's expression flickered, something almost like respect, but then it hardened again. My son deserves better than this, than you. Then let him decide that. Natalie opened the door. But you don't get to decide for him. And you don't get to buy me off like I'm some problem you can throw money at until it disappears. After Victoria left, Natalie collapsed on the couch. Gran sat beside her, pulling her close. That woman, Gran said darkly, needs to learn some manners. She's scared. She's already lost her husband. She's terrified of losing her son, too. That doesn't give her the right to treat you like trash. No, but it makes her human. Natalie wiped her eyes. I should call Carter. Tell him about... Her phone rang. Carter. Of course. My mother just left, didn't she? He said without preamble. How did you know? Because she just called me, furious that you refused her money. Natalie, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was planning... It's fine. It's not fine. She had no right to... Carter, stop. Natalie's exhaustion bled through. Your mother is protective. I get it. But I'm tired of fighting. Tired of defending myself. Tired of proving I'm not some opportunist when all I wanted was to tell you about our baby. I know, and I'm going to fix this. How? You can't control what people think. Can't force your family to accept me. Can't wave a magic wand and make this situation less complicated. I can try. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're both trying too hard. Natalie closed her eyes. Maybe your mother's right. Maybe I don't belong in your world. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. I'm a translator from Brooklyn. You're a billionaire CEO. Your mother offers me money to disappear. The press calls me a gold digger. My best friend betrayed me out of jealousy. What kind of life is that for a kid? A life with parents who love them. That's what matters. Is it? Natalie's voice broke. Because right now it feels like loving you is the worst decision I've ever made. The silence on the other end was deafening. You love me? Carter's voice came out raw. Damn it. She hadn't meant to say that. I have to go. Natalie, wait. She hung up, dropped the phone like it was burning her, and tried to ignore the way her heart was racing. The DNA results came back 3 days later. Carter was at Natalie's apartment within an hour, envelope in hand, Benjamin and Jasmine trailing behind him. What are they doing here? Natalie asked, looking at the teenagers. We want to be here, Benjamin said, when you open it. As a family, Jasmine added, then paused. If that's okay. Despite everything, Natalie's chest warmed. It's okay. They gathered in the tiny living room. Carter, Natalie, Gran, Benjamin, and Jasmine. Carter held the envelope like it contained explosives. Whatever it says, he began. I want you to know... Just open it, Natalie interrupted. Please. He did. Read the paper, read it again. Then looked up at Natalie with eyes that shimmered. Positive. 99.9% probability. His voice cracked. It's mine. The baby's mine. The relief was overwhelming. Natalie had known. Of course she'd known. But having proof felt like vindication. Like finally, someone would believe her. Congratulations, she said softly. You're going to be a father. We're going to be parents, Carter corrected. He looked at his siblings. You're going to be uncle and aunt, Benjamin whooped. Jasmine grinned. And then they were all hugging this strange makeshift family in her tiny Brooklyn apartment. When Carter pulled back, there was determination in his eyes. I need to show you something. He pulled out his phone, opened a file, and handed it to Natalie. This is the complete investigation report. I want you to read it. All of it. Carter, please. I need you to see what I saw, what made me realize... Natalie took the phone, started reading, and with each line, felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just facts about her life. It was her kindness captured in character references from clients who called her unfailingly professional and warm. Her struggles detailed in rental payment histories that showed she was never late, despite tight finances. Her relationship with Gran described by neighbors as devoted. Her friendship with Charlotte documented through years of social media posts showing genuine affection. And at the end, a note from Carter. Subject displays consistent pattern of honesty, integrity, and fierce independence. No evidence of deceptive intent. Conclusion: Natalie Spencer is exactly who she appears to be, a good person doing her best in difficult circumstances. "You wrote this," she said, looking up. "I wrote that conclusion, yes, after reading everything. After realizing I'd been an idiot to doubt you even for a second." Carter knelt in front of her. "Natalie, I'm sorry. For the investigation, for my mother, for every moment you felt like you had to prove yourself. You never should have had to prove anything. I should have just believed you. You were protecting your family. I was protecting myself from being hurt again, from being vulnerable." He took her hands. "But you know what? Being hurt is worth it if it means having you in my life. Being vulnerable is worth it if it means being with you. Carter, I love you." The words tumbled out, desperate and honest. "I've loved you since that first night. Maybe before that. Maybe from the first moment I saw you across that ballroom, looking like you wanted to be anywhere else. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you stand up to my mother. I love that you refused her money, even though you needed it. I love that you're terrified, but doing this anyway." Natalie's vision blurred. "I'm so scared." "I know, me too." He pressed his forehead to hers. "But I'm more scared of losing you, of our child growing up without both of us together, of living the rest of my life wondering what if it doesn't work? What if we're too different? Then we figure it out, together." He cupped her face. "But I need you to tell me right now. Do you love me? Because you said it on the phone, and then you ran, and I need to know if you meant it." Natalie looked at this man, brilliant, damaged, trying so hard, and felt the last of her walls crumble. "I love you. God help me. I love you so much it terrifies me." The kiss was inevitable, desperate, full of 2 months of longing and fear, and finally letting themselves feel it. Carter's hands tangled in her hair. Natalie's fingers gripped his shirt. The world narrowed to just this, his mouth on hers, his breath mixing with hers, two broken people finding something whole in each other. When they finally broke apart, Benjamin was covering Jasmine's eyes. "Gross," Jasmine said, but she was smiling. "Necessary," Carter corrected. He stood, pulling Natalie up with him. "I need to fix this. The press, Charlotte's lies, my mother's interference, all of it. Will you let me? I don't want you to fix me, Carter. I want you to be with me. There's a difference. Then be with me. Move in with me. Let me support you while you rebuild your career. Let me be there for doctor's appointments and midnight cravings and everything in between." His eyes were pleading. "Let me be your partner, not your savior, your partner." Natalie looked at Gran, who nodded encouragingly, looked at Benjamin and Jasmine, who were watching with hopeful expressions, looked at Carter, who was offering her everything she'd been too afraid to want. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, yes. Let's do this." And when he kissed her again, it felt like coming home. Moving in with Carter Sullivan was like stepping into an alternate dimension, where everything was simultaneously too much and somehow exactly right. The apartment was ridiculous. Natalie had known it was big, but living there full-time revealed just how absurd the space was. Her entire Brooklyn apartment could fit in the master bedroom. The kitchen had appliances she didn't know the names for. The closet in the guest room, now officially her room, though she hadn't actually slept there yet, was larger than her old bedroom. "This is insane," she told Carter on her third morning there, staring at the espresso machine that looked like it required an engineering degree to operate. "Who needs a coffee maker that costs more than a car?" "Someone who drinks a lot of coffee," Carter said, appearing behind her and reaching around to press a series of buttons. The machine whirred to life. "Also, it makes excellent hot chocolate, which you like." "I like the hot chocolate from the bodega down the street. This is better. Trust me. He handed her a mug topped with perfect foam. Try it. She did. It was annoyingly delicious. I hate that you're right. Get used to it. I'm right about most things. And so humble, too. He grinned, that boyish grin that made him look years younger and did stupid things to her heart rate. They were still figuring out this whole living together thing, still navigating the weird space between parents of the same baby and actually dating, still tripping over the intensity of feelings neither of them quite knew how to handle. The night before, they'd fallen asleep on the couch watching a documentary about coral reefs, Jasmine's recommendation. Natalie had woken up with her head on Carter's chest, his arm around her, both of them covered by a blanket she didn't remember getting. He'd been awake, running his fingers through her hair with such gentleness it made her throat tight. "How long have you been awake?" she'd whispered. "Hour or so. Didn't want to move. You looked peaceful." Now, in the morning light, they moved around each other with careful choreography, not quite touching, always aware of where the other was. The attraction was a living thing between them, crackling and urgent and terrifying. Carter's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and groaned. "My mother wants to have dinner tonight with you." "Pass. I tried that. She said if you don't come willingly, she'll show up here and drag you herself." Natalie set down her mug. "Your mother is exhausting. Tell me about it. I've lived with her for 19 years. He hesitated. "She's trying, you know, in her own dysfunctional way." "Trying to what? Make my life miserable?" "Trying to accept that her son is having a baby with someone she can't control or intimidate." Carter moved closer. "She's scared, Natalie. Scared of losing me. Scared I'll get hurt again. Scared this baby will change everything. This baby will change everything. I know, and she knows. But she's Victoria Sullivan. Admitting fear would require vulnerability, which she's allergic to." Despite herself, Natalie smiled. "Fine. Dinner. But if she offers me money again, I'm throwing my drink at her." "That's fair. I'll alert the restaurant." The dinner was at an exclusive French restaurant that made Natalie feel underdressed, despite the designer maternity dress Carter had insisted on buying. Victoria was already seated, looking imperial in pearls and judgment. "Miss Spencer." Victoria's greeting was coolly polite. Progress, maybe. "Mrs. Sullivan." Natalie sat, Carter's hand warm on her lower back. They ordered, made small talk, discussed the weather with the kind of forced politeness usually reserved for hostage negotiations. And then, halfway through the appetizers, Victoria said, "I was wrong." Natalie nearly choked on her water. "I'm sorry, what?" "I said I was wrong." Victoria set down her fork with precision. "About you, about your intentions, about everything." Carter looked as shocked as Natalie felt. "Mom, let me finish." Victoria's voice was sharp. "I investigated you, offered you money, questioned your integrity, and you responded with dignity and grace I didn't deserve. You refused a fortune to keep my grandchild from their father. That's—" She paused, something like emotion flickering across her face. "That's the kind of mother I hope you'll be." The sincerity in her voice made Natalie's eyes burn. "Mrs. Sullivan, Victoria, please." She reached across the table, an awkward gesture that looked unpracticed. "I lost my husband 3 months ago. The idea of losing my son, too, to another scandal or heartbreak, it terrified me. But watching Carter with you, seeing how he looks at you—" She cleared her throat. "That's not scandal. That's love." "Mom," Carter said softly, covering her hand with his. "I'm still going to be difficult," Victoria continued, a ghost of a smile on her lips. "I'm still going to worry, still going to meddle. It's what I do. But I'm willing to try, to accept that my son loves you, that you love him, that this baby will be part of our family whether I like it or not." "And do you like it?" Natalie asked quietly. Victoria looked at her, really looked at her, for a long moment. I like that my grandchild will have a mother who fights for them. I like that you stood up to me when most people are too intimidated to try." She squeezed Natalie's hand briefly before pulling back. "So yes, I suppose I like it." The rest of dinner was easier. Victoria asked about the pregnancy with genuine interest, shared embarrassing stories about Carter as a child, even laughed when Natalie recounted the ginger tea incident at 3 a.m. Walking back to the car, Carter pulled Natalie against his side. That was unexpected. Your mother apologizing. Yeah, I thought hell would freeze over first. She likes you. She tolerates me. Trust me. For my mother, that's the same thing. He stopped, turning to face her in the parking garage's dim light. Thank you for trying with her, for trying with all of them. They're your family. Soon they'll be our baby's family too. And yours. They're your family too. His hands came up to cup her face. You're not alone in this, Natalie. Not anymore. The kiss was soft, sweet, different from the desperate ones before. This was promise, commitment, the start of something real. When they broke apart, Natalie was smiling. Take me home. Home, Carter repeated, like he was testing the word. I like how that sounds. So do I. Back at the apartment, they ended up on the couch again, Natalie's new favorite place, apparently. Carter had one hand resting on her small baby bump, his thumb drawing absent circles. Can you feel anything yet? He asked. Sometimes I think I can, but the doctor said it's too early. Still, it's in there, growing. His expression was full of wonder. We made a person. We made a person, Natalie agreed. Her person who's going to have your stubbornness and my tendency to overthink everything. We're doomed. Or blessed. Depending on perspective. She turned to look at him. Are you scared? Terrified? You? Absolutely. She laced her fingers through his. But less scared when you're here. Then I'll be here, always. He kissed her forehead, her temple, the corner of her mouth. I'm not going anywhere, Natalie Spencer. You're stuck with me. Good. Because I'm terrible at building cribs and I'll definitely need help with that. He laughed, and the sound filled something hollow inside her chest. These quiet moments of domesticity and laughter and gentle affection, this was what she'd been missing, what she'd been too scared to want. Her phone buzzed. Charlotte's name flashed on the screen. The third call this week. Natalie declined it without answering. You're going to have to talk to her eventually, Carter said gently. Why? She betrayed me. Because forgiveness isn't for her, it's for you. He kissed her hair. But only when you're ready. No rush. Natalie snuggled deeper into his embrace, letting his warmth chase away the lingering hurt. Tomorrow she'd think about Charlotte, about rebuilding her career, about the logistics of preparing for a baby. Tomorrow she'd be practical. Tonight, she just wanted to be here, in Carter's arms, in their home, building their future, one quiet moment at a time. At 16 weeks, Natalie's body started doing things she hadn't anticipated, like suddenly craving pickles dipped in peanut butter at 2 a.m., or crying at a commercial about laundry detergent, or developing an irrational hatred of the color yellow. It's everywhere, she complained to Carter, who was trying very hard not to laugh. Yellow traffic lights, yellow taxis, that yellow throw pillow. Why do you even have that? I don't know. My decorator chose it? Fire them. I can't live with yellow. Noted. No yellow. Got it. He was definitely fighting a smile now. You think this is funny? I think you're adorable. I'm hormonal and irrational. That's not adorable. Disagree. Very adorable. He kissed the top of her head. Want me to get rid of the pillow? Please. Before I commit pillow murder. He removed the offending cushion with exaggerated solemnity, and Natalie felt simultaneously ridiculous and grateful. This was their new normal, Carter catering to her increasingly bizarre pregnancy demands while she tried not to feel like a burden. She'd started working again, slowly. Carter had helped clear her name through a carefully orchestrated press conference where he'd been devastatingly honest about their situation. The scandal had died down. Clients were cautiously returning. Life was finding a rhythm. Benjamin had taken to texting her terrible memes about pregnancy. Jasmine sent her marine biology facts for the baby's education. Even Victoria called once a week to ask how she was feeling, which was progress wrapped in slightly judgy concern. And Carter was everywhere, attentive without smothering, supportive without controlling. He'd even started reading pregnancy books, which led to him spouting facts at random moments. Did you know the baby can hear voices now? He'd announced that morning over breakfast. I did know that, yes. So if I talk to your stomach, they can hear me? Theoretically. He'd immediately crouched down and started having a one-sided conversation with her belly about quarterly reports and stock prices. Natalie had laughed so hard she'd nearly spilled her juice. Now 3 days later she was attempting to cook dinner, attempting being the key word. Gran had insisted she learn to make her famous Portuguese chicken stew, and Natalie was discovering she had exactly zero talent for cooking. "This doesn't look right," she muttered, staring at the pot. Carter appeared beside her, peering over her shoulder. "Is it supposed to be that color?" "I don't think so. Maybe I added too much paprika?" "How much did the recipe call for?" 2 teaspoons. "And you added?" 2 tablespoons, but that's basically the same thing." "Natalie!" "No, that's not—" He started laughing. "That's like 6 times the amount." "Well, the recipe should be clearer." "The recipe is very clear. You just can't measure." She turned to glare at him and found him looking at her with such affection it stole her breath. "What?" "You're standing in my kitchen covered in paprika, arguing about measurements while attempting to make Portuguese chicken stew. And I've never been happier." The honesty in his voice made her throat tight. "You're weird." "Probably. But I'm your weird." He pulled her close, careful of her growing belly. "Dance with me." "There's no music." "So?" But he pulled out his phone anyway, pulling up a playlist. Something soft and old started playing. Frank Sinatra, she thought. They swayed together in the kitchen, the failed stew forgotten. Carter's hand splayed across her lower back, warm and possessive. His other hand cradled hers against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, steady, sure, real. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "I love you too, even though you mocked my cooking." "I wasn't mocking. I was observing with great fondness." "Liar." He spun her gently and she laughed, actually laughed, bright and surprised. When had she become this person? This woman who danced in kitchens and laughed at cooking disasters and felt safe enough to be loved. And then, "Oh!" Natalie stopped moving, one hand flying to her stomach. Carter froze. "What? What's wrong?" "Nothing. I just—" She grabbed his hand, pressing it against her belly. "Wait. Stay still." They stood there, barely breathing, waiting, and then there a flutter, soft like butterfly wings but unmistakable. Carter's eyes went wide. "Was that the baby?" Natalie's voice cracked. "The baby's moving." His expression transformed, shock melting into wonder, wonder bleeding into something so profound it didn't have a name. He dropped to his knees, hands cradling her belly with reverent gentleness. "Hey there, little one," he whispered. "That's quite the kick. You're going to be a soccer player, aren't you?" Another flutter like the baby was responding. Carter laughed, a sound of pure joy, and pressed his forehead against her stomach. "I'm your dad," he said softly, "and I already love you more than I thought possible. You and your mum, you're my whole world." Natalie's tears fell freely now, one hand tangled in Carter's hair, the other still resting on her belly. This moment, this perfect, impossible moment, felt like the answer to prayers she hadn't known how to pray. Carter looked up at her, and the emotion in his eyes was overwhelming. "Thank you." "For what?" "For this. For them. For trusting me enough to try." He stood, pulling her close. "For loving me even when I was an idiot." "You're still an idiot sometimes." "True, but I'm your idiot." He kissed her softly, sweetly. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." The baby kicked again, and they both felt it, a reminder of the tiny life they'd created, the future they were building together. "We should order pizza," Natalie said eventually, eyeing the ruined stew. "Good call, the chicken stew is definitely dead." "It's not dead, it's just enhanced with paprika." "That's one word for it." They ordered pizza, ate it on the couch with plates balanced on their laps, argued about baby names with increasing absurdity. "No, Carter, we're not naming our child Entrepreneur Jr." Fell asleep, tangled together, hands resting on the small swell of her belly, where their baby, their miracle, continued to grow. And Natalie thought, this is home. Not the expensive apartment or the designer furniture. This, Carter's arms around her, their baby moving between them, laughter echoing off the walls. This is what home feels like, finally. At 20 weeks, they had the anatomy scan, the big one, the one where they'd find out if everything was developing properly, and if they wanted, the sex of the baby. Natalie was terrified. "What if something's wrong?" she asked Carter for the 17th time that morning. "Then we'll deal with it together." He squeezed her hand. But nothing's going to be wrong. You don't know that. You're right. But I know that worrying won't change anything. And I know that whatever happens, we face it as a team. The ultrasound technician was cheerful and efficient, squirting gel on Natalie's now prominent belly and pressing the wand against her skin. The screen flickered to life, and suddenly there was their baby. So much bigger than before, so much more real. There's the head, the technician narrated. Arms, legs, spine looking good. Heart has 4 chambers, all functioning beautifully. Kidneys, stomach, brain, everything's developing right on schedule. Natalie's relief was so overwhelming she started crying. Carter's hand gripped hers so tightly she thought he might break something, but she didn't care. "Would you like to know the sex?" the technician asked. They looked at each other. They'd agreed to find out, but now, in the moment, Natalie hesitated. "What do you think?" "I think I want to know everything about them. Every detail, every possibility." Carter's smile was soft. "So yes, please." The technician moved the wand, angling for a better view. "Well, your daughter is being very cooperative today." Daughter. The word hung in the air like a bell tone, clear, pure, perfect. Carter's face did something complicated. His eyes went shiny, his jaw worked, and when he spoke, his voice was wrecked. "A girl. We're having a girl." "A girl," Natalie repeated, and suddenly she could see it. A little girl with Carter's green eyes and her stubborn chin, running through the apartment, laughing, alive. They left the hospital in a daze, ultrasound photos clutched in Carter's hand, like precious artifacts. In the car, he kept looking at them, shaking his head in wonder. "A daughter," he said again. "I'm going to have a daughter." "You already have a daughter. Jasmine. I'm her guardian. It's different." He looked at Natalie. "This is my child, mine and yours, a whole person we created." Getting philosophical on me? Maybe. I'm allowed. I just found out I'm having a daughter. Back at the apartment, Carter immediately called his siblings. Benjamin whooped so loudly Natalie could hear it through the phone. Jasmine's response was, "Yes, I'm going to teach her everything. Can I paint her room ocean colors?" Victoria's reaction was more subdued, but no less meaningful. "A granddaughter," she said, her voice thick. "My first granddaughter." That evening they lay in bed. Their bed because Natalie had stopped pretending she slept in the guest room weeks ago, with Carter's hand resting on her belly, waiting for kicks. "What should we name her?" he asked. "I don't know, something strong, something beautiful." "Like her mother." Natalie rolled her eyes. "You're very smooth, you know that?" "I'm sincere. There's a difference." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. "You're the strongest person I've ever met. You collapsed on my doorstep, and instead of asking for anything, you just wanted me to know about our daughter. You stood up to my mother, refused money, rebuilt your career from nothing. You're extraordinary. I'm just doing what I have to do. That's what makes it extraordinary." His hand cupped her face. "Most people crumble under pressure. You sharpen. You get fiercer, more determined." "Carter, I'm not finished." His thumb brushed her cheek. "I want to marry you. Not because of the baby, not because it's the right thing to do, because I love you, because I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life, because the thought of not being yours makes me want to set things on fire." Her breath caught. "That's not a proposal." "I know. When I propose, it'll be better than this. More planned, more romantic." He leaned down, his lips a whisper from hers. "But I needed you to know that this isn't obligation. It's choice. Every day I choose you." The kiss was different from all the others, slower, deeper, full of promise and heat, and finally, no more hesitation. His mouth moved over hers with devastating thoroughness, learning every curve, every sigh, every shiver. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "Carter," Natalie whispered, "tell me, whatever you want, it's yours. You. I want you." Her hands fisted in his shirt. "All of you. No more holding back. No more being careful, just us." Something blazed in his eyes. Need, love, barely restrained desire. "Are you sure? The baby—" "The doctor said it's safe. And I'm sure. I've been sure for weeks. I'm just tired of waiting." Then we stopped waiting. He kissed her again, and this time there was nothing gentle about it. This was hunger unleashed, control shattered, every wall between them finally crumbling. He undressed her slowly, reverently, his mouth following the path of his hands. Every touch was worship, every kiss was devotion. When he reached her belly, he paused, pressing his lips against the swell where their daughter grew. "I love you," he whispered to the baby. "Both of you, more than anything." Then he looked up at Natalie, and the intensity in his gaze stole her breath. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." What followed was transcendent. Carter touched her like she was made of starlight, careful but not timid, passionate but not rough. He learned her body with the same focus he applied to everything, paying attention to every gasp, every arch, every whispered yes. When they finally came together, it was like coming home, like finding the missing piece she hadn't known was gone. His forehead pressed against hers, their breath mingling, and Natalie felt something in her chest crack open, not breaking, but blooming. "I love you," he breathed against her lips. "God, Natalie, I love you." "Show me," she whispered back. "Show me again." So he did, over and over, until they were both trembling and sated and tangled so completely she couldn't tell where she ended, and he began. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with their daughter moving gently between them, Natalie felt peace settle into her bones. This was right. This was real. This was everything she'd been too afraid to dream of. "No regrets?" Carter asked softly, his hand drawing lazy circles on her hip. "Not even one." She turned to look at him. "You? Only that we didn't do this sooner." He kissed her shoulder. "I love you, Natalie Spencer. You and our daughter. My whole world. I love you too." She laced her fingers through his. "My whole everything." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, their daughter moving between them. Finally whole. At 37 weeks, Natalie was officially done with pregnancy. "I'm a whale," she announced, struggling to get off the couch. "A beached, miserable whale who can't see her own feet." Carter bit back a smile. He'd learned that laughing at pregnant Natalie was grounds for pillow-related violence. "You're beautiful." "I'm enormous." "There's a difference." "Beautifully enormous?" "Carter Sullivan, I swear to God." He pulled her up easily, dropping a kiss on her forehead. "You're the most beautiful whale I've ever seen." "Better?" "Marginally." But she was smiling now. "The doctor said she could come any day now." "I know. I've had the hospital bag packed for 2 weeks, and repacked it 4 times. Because you keep taking things out. I don't need 3 different going-home outfits for the baby. One is fine. What if she spits up on the first one?" Natalie looked at him, this brilliant, powerful man who was currently freaking out about baby spit-up, and felt her heart overflow. "You're going to be such a good dad." "I'm going to try." His hand found her belly, feeling for kicks. Their daughter was active today, apparently practicing gymnastics. "Think she'll come soon?" "I hope so. I'm ready to not be pregnant anymore." "You sure? You'll miss complaining about your swollen ankles." "I'll find other things to complain about, like your snoring." "I don't snore." "You absolutely snore. It's like sharing a bed with a chainsaw." He was about to respond when the doorbell rang. Carter frowned. They weren't expecting anyone. Marcus appeared with a tablet, showing security footage. Charlotte stood at the door, looking nervous and determined. Natalie's stomach clenched. She'd been avoiding this for months, ignoring calls, deleting voicemails, pretending her former best friend didn't exist. But seeing her there, looking small and regretful, "I'll send her away," Carter said immediately. "No." Natalie took a breath. "Let her up." "Are you sure?" "No. But I'm tired of running from hard conversations." When Charlotte entered, the awkwardness was suffocating. She looked thinner, older somehow, tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly. Natalie gestured to a chair. "You have 5 minutes." Charlotte sat, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. I was jealous and petty, and I destroyed your reputation because I couldn't stand that he chose you." "Is there a point to this?" Natalie asked, sharper than intended. "The point is, I've spent the past 5 months in therapy working through my issues, and I've realized that what I did wasn't about you or Carter. It was about me feeling like I wasn't enough, like if I couldn't have what I wanted, no one should." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. You were my best friend, the only person who never cared about my money or my family name. And I threw that away because I was too immature to handle rejection. You didn't just throw away our friendship, Charlotte. You tried to destroy my life. I know, and I can't fix that, can't undo it. Charlotte pulled out an envelope. But I can try to make it right. I've spent the past 3 months contacting every client you lost, every publication that printed those lies, told them the truth, that I fabricated stories out of jealousy, that you were innocent. Natalie took the envelope, opened it. Inside were letters, apologies from clients, retractions from websites, even a formal statement Charlotte had given to the press, taking full responsibility. I've also set up a trust fund, Charlotte continued, for your daughter. It's completely in your name. You can refuse it, use it, whatever you want. But I wanted to do something. Anything. Money doesn't fix betrayal, Natalie said, but her anger was fading, replaced by exhaustion. I know. Nothing fixes betrayal except time and proof that you've changed. Charlotte stood. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Genuinely, completely sorry. You deserved better from me. Your daughter deserves better. She was at the door when Natalie spoke. Charlotte, wait. Charlotte turned, hope flickering in her expression. I'm not ready to forgive you yet. Maybe not for a long time. Natalie's hand rested on her belly. But I appreciate you trying to make it right. That took courage. It took common decency, which I should have had from the start. Charlotte's smile was sad. I hope someday I can meet her, your daughter, and maybe show her that people can change. Maybe, Natalie said. Someday. After Charlotte left, Carter pulled Natalie close. Are you okay? I think so. It felt good. To say what I needed to say. To not just forgive because it's easier. That's my fierce woman. Yours? She raised an eyebrow. Absolutely mine, which reminds me... He pulled back, suddenly nervous in a way she'd never seen. I need to show you something. He led her to the nursery. The room Jasmine had indeed painted ocean colors, complete with a mural of coral reefs and sea turtles. But something was different. In the center of the room stood a white crib, and inside it was a box. Carter, what? Open it. With shaking hands, Natalie opened the box. Inside was a ring, a simple, elegant diamond that caught the light like captured starlight, and beneath it, a letter in Carter's handwriting. Natalie, I've tried to write this 17 times. Each time, the words aren't enough. How do I explain that you've changed everything? That before you I was going through motions, playing a part, building an empire but not a life. You walked into that gala looking like you'd rather be anywhere else. And I thought, finally, someone real, someone honest. Someone who sees me, not my bank account. That night changed me. You changed me. And even when I was an idiot who doubted you, who investigated you, who let fear rule me, you gave me grace. You gave me chances I didn't deserve. You gave me a daughter I didn't know I needed. I'm not proposing in this letter, that would be cowardly. But I needed you to have this ring before she arrives, before our world expands and we're sleep-deprived and covered in baby spit-up. I needed you to know I choose you. Today, tomorrow, every day. Not because you're the mother of my child, because you're the love of my life. Natalie looked up through tears to find Carter on one knee, looking up at her with everything he felt written across his face. Natalie Marie Spencer, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You are fierce and stubborn, and you make me work for every inch of trust. You call me out when I'm being an idiot. You refuse my money. You stand up to my mother. You make terrible Portuguese chicken stew and dance with me in kitchens, and look at me like I'm more than my last name. He took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. You're my best friend, my partner, the mother of my daughter, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you chose right, that I'm worthy of your faith, that our love story isn't just about a baby, it's about us. Carter, her voice broke, marry me, not because you have to, not because it makes sense, but because you love me half as much as I love you, because you want to build a life with me, because you can't imagine waking up without me stealing the covers. You're the one who steals the covers. Is that a yes? That's a you're an idiot who does steal the covers and yes, yes, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring on her finger, stood, and kissed her with everything he had, Love and relief and joy all tangled together. The baby kicked between them like she was celebrating too. "I love you," Natalie whispered against his mouth. "I love you too, both of you, always." And their daughter, Emma Rose Sullivan, was born 3 days later at 4:47 a.m., the exact time Carter's father had died, which Carter claimed was a sign. She had Natalie's dark hair and Carter's green eyes and lungs that could wake the dead. Natalie had never been so exhausted or so happy in her entire life. "She's perfect," Carter breathed, cradling Emma like she was made of glass. "Absolutely perfect." "She's loud," Natalie corrected, but she was smiling. Gran arrived first, crying happy tears and declaring Emma the most beautiful baby ever born. Benjamin and Jasmine came next, Jasmine immediately pulling out her phone to show Emma photos of coral reefs. Victoria appeared last, holding a massive teddy bear and looking uncharacteristically emotional. "She has your father's eyes," Victoria told Carter softly, touching Emma's tiny hand. "And Mum's spirit, probably. We're in trouble." Victoria laughed, actually laughed, and kissed her granddaughter's forehead. "Welcome to the family, little one. We're complicated, but we're yours." That evening, when everyone had finally left and Emma was asleep in her bassinet, Carter and Natalie lay in the hospital bed together, exhausted and happy. "We did it," Natalie whispered. "We made a person." "Best collaboration ever," he kissed her temple, "though the next one should probably be planned better." "Next one?" "Carter, I just pushed a human out of my body. Can we table that discussion for like 5 years?" "Fair point." Emma stirred, making the little squeaking sounds newborns make. Carter immediately got up, scooping her into his arms with practiced ease from exactly 3 hours of experience. "Hey there, Emma Rose," he murmured. "Having trouble sleeping?" "Yeah, me too. There's too much to think about. Like how you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, how your mom is a superhero, how we're going to teach you to be fierce and kind and exactly yourself." Natalie watched them, her daughter and her fiancé, and felt something settle into place. This was her family. Complicated, unexpected, absolutely perfect. "I love you," she said softly. Carter looked over, Emma cradled against his chest. "Both of us?" "All of us. This whole messy, beautiful family we've built. Best mess I've ever made." He came back to bed, settling Emma between them. "Our family." And as the sun rose over the city, painting the hospital room in gold, Natalie looked at her fiancé and her daughter and thought, "This is it. This is the happily ever after I was too scared to want. This is home." Film da narrativa. Leave your comment and share this story with someone special. It truly helps us keep bringing new stories to you. And if you want to follow every chapter of this emotional journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Your support makes all the difference.